Before we start, a quick note. I've launched a new podcast called How Words Work. It looks at how the language used in lying and manipulation also shows up in everyday communication, often without people realising. And when you use that language, even honestly, it changes how people hear you. If you want to understand how to remove those signals from your own speech to sound clearer, more authoritative, and more credible, that's what this new show is all about. You can find How Words Work with Jack Fox on all podcast platforms, like where you are now. Right, let's go to this episode. Brooklyn Beckham says he wants peace and privacy. And to get that privacy, he released a nearly 1,000-word statement accusing his family of betrayal, control, and sabotage. He put himself at the eye of a publicity storm. Did he really want privacy or something else? Let's break down what he said. Welcome to Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If you're new to this, what I do here is different from anywhere else because every time I strip away everything apart from the words that are said by the person at the centre of the story. And then I look for the truth hidden inside those words. It's a process that I use with investigators, with corporate clients, and with the media to get a deep understanding of what is being said. And we're going to look at the statement which has caught a lot of news attention this week from Brooklyn Beckham, talking about his issues with his family. As we go through the statement, there's a few things I want you to look for. I want you to listen for timings, especially how he talks about relative timings around the wedding day. I'll point them out as they happen, but it's fascinating. And yes, we will cover the two big things that he's been accused of lying about. Number one, the dress story, and number two, the story about the first dance at the wedding. I want you to listen to how he describes those. So let's have a look at Brooklyn Beckham's statement. And it starts with, I have been silent for years and made every effort to keep these matters private. First thing I look for in a statement like this is who is the specified audience. In a letter or an email, that's really easy. It begins with, Dear John, hi Susan, or something like that. And that tells us who the primary audience is for the communication. Here, he doesn't say that. There's no audience specified, although this was posted on social media. So the audience, the primary audience, is the entire world. But often there's a secondary audience as well. That is people that it's not directly addressed to, but people that it's meant to affect. You might know this best when you CC in someone on an email and you do that thing of, I want this person to take some action based on what I've said, or I want them to know what I'm up to, or I want to cover myself by copying in this person as well. So that could be what is going on here. Is there a secondary audience? Well, the private, and saying that there's no longer private, is saying maybe more to those people who had hoped for the privacy, or the people that he had been talking to in private. He's now putting them on notice that he is talking to everyone else. And that, in his words, I think would be his family, as we'll see later on. So this is really a statement that's issued to the world, but I think this is really aimed at his family. Now, he owns what he says. He says, I have been silent for years. His very first word is I. He is owning this statement. If he just said, been silent for years, he wouldn't be there at all. He does start with something that I think is an attempt to make him look admirable, which is a resume statement, if you like. I've been silent for years. What a good guy I am. I've kept this all inside and haven't made waves. And that's one of the first things I want you to know from this. I've been silent for years and made every effort to keep these matters private. Now he's not being silent. Now he's talking, and this is not private. The statement continues. Unfortunately, my parents and their team have continued to go to the press, leaving me with no choice but to speak for myself and tell the truth about only some of the lies that have been printed. Let's break down that. Unfortunately, my parents and their team have continued to go to the press. So here he's telling us who he has an issue with, and he's listing them. And when we list things, the first thing we mention in the list is very often the thing that takes up the most space in our head. It's the priority. It's the most important thing to us. And as the list goes on, things get less important and less of a priority. So his parents are his stated number one issue, and that is high up. But their team, whatever that means, publicists, managers, he could consider the family their team as well. My parents and their team have continued to go to the press. So parents, biggest issue for him. And they've continued to go to the press, letting us know that they were going to the press and they're still going to the press. They have continued to go to the press. Press, very important to Brooklyn, as we'll see as we go through this. Leaving me with no choice but to speak for myself. Who do we normally speak for? And to tell the truth about only some of the lies that have been printed. So to tell the truth about only some of the lies that have been printed means he's not telling us the full truth here. He's not sharing everything with us. He's putting that on notice that this is only one part of that truth, and only some of the lies that have been printed. Now, you might well be taking this in and you've seen the full statement, read the full statement. Does he, and if you haven't, or if you have, let's just go through the statement. Does he tell the truth about some of the lies through this statement? I didn't really see that happening. I didn't see him tell the truth. I saw him say some things that he was really hacked off about, but tell the truth about some of the lies, not sure. And not some of the lies that have been said by his parents. You'll notice that it's not some of the lies that have been said about him. It's some of the lies that have been printed. So going to the press and being printed has come up. This is very early in the statement, and the press and printed. Obviously, he has a real issue with what is said about him in public, but not what is said about him in public by his parents, but what is said in the press about him. Now, he might feel his parents are feeding that and telling the press what to print, but it's not the fact his parents have said it. It's the fact that these have been in the press and have been printed. By the way, I pulled out that word continued. They've continued to go to the press. Did he ask them to stop? Is that why he's saying they continued to go to the press? Did he say, please don't go to the press anymore? And why he has an issue and says continued is because they kept doing that. He says, I do not want to reconcile with my family. I'm not being controlled. I want to stand up for myself for the first time in my life. So, I do not want to reconcile with my family. That's a statement in the negative. And when someone states something in the negative like that, it shows where their focus is. He could say, I want to be apart from my family for the rest of my life. His focus would be on being apart from his family. But he says, I do not want to reconcile with my family. Therefore, reconciliation actually is foremost in his mind. I think he would like to reconcile with his family, have some sort of reconciliation with them. And that's just normal. Yeah, we'd all like to be reconciled with everyone in our lives that we want to be reconciled with. I do not want to reconcile with my family. Again, doesn't say that he isn't ever going to. It's just, I don't want to. It's slightly weaker than I will never reconcile with my family. It's, I do not want to reconcile with my family. Also, it's formal. It's not, I don't want to reconcile with my family. It's, I do not want to, which I think is to make that appear stronger. I think he does want to reconcile with his family. And that's why he's issuing this statement, to try and shock them into some reconciliation with them. He says, I'm not being controlled. Again, his focus is on not what's not happening. It's a negative statement. So he may well feel that he is being controlled in some way. I'm standing up for myself for the first time in my life. He's standing up for myself, and you can see it's myself versus my parents and their team. So much just in the beginning of that, we can see what his issues are and where he stands on them. He then says, for my entire life, my parents have controlled narratives in the press about our family. Now, he's talking in an absolute here. For my entire life, my parents have controlled narratives in the press about our family. That is very rarely true. These absolutes, I've never been so embarrassed in all my life, is something you might say when you're very embarrassed, but chances are something has been more embarrassing or equally embarrassing. But we talk in those absolute terms. I've never been so embarrassed in my entire life. And I think this is the same thing. For my entire life, my parents have controlled narratives. I think he wants to persuade us that it's happened a lot. I think it's happened a lot, but it hasn't happened for his entire life, like every second of his life. And his beef with his parents, once again, is about what is in the press. They have controlled the narrative in the press. I think public image is way more important to him than what is going on in private. He then talks about the performative social media posts, family events, and inauthentic relationships have been a fixture of the life I was born into. Here's another list. And what is the thing that is number one in that list? Performative social media posts. Again, how he's seen. He really has an issue with image. And then it's family events, and then it's inauthentic relationships that he has an issue with. He carries on. Recently, I have seen with my own eyes the lengths that they will go to place countless lies in the media, mostly at the expense of innocent people to preserve their own facade. But I believe the truth always comes out. So recently, I have seen through my own eyes the lengths they will go to place countless lies in the media. And it's not so much in his own words, it's not the fact that they are doing this, it's not the fact they are saying this, it's the fact they are in the media. He's really, really focused on the public perception of him. Not so much on what his parents are saying, but the fact that people see it. That is what his issue is mostly at the expense of innocent people. Mostly at the expense of innocent people. And who are these innocent people? Is it him? Because he doesn't say it's him. It's just innocent people. It's just a very general thing. It might not necessarily be him, to preserve their own facade. Is this the truth that he's telling us? Because he said, I'm going to correct some of the lies. Or is this a warning shot? There is no elaboration on the truth behind the facade. He says they want to preserve their own facade, but he doesn't say preserve what? He doesn't say this is what you see about them, the facade, but this is the truth behind them. He says, I believe the truth always comes out. He doesn't elaborate on what that truth is or who the innocent people are. I think this is a warning shot to his parents. Do things my way. Agree with me. Meet me halfway, whatever it is. Or I'm going to talk and I'm going to break that facade. I think that's what's going on here. He then says, my parents have been trying endlessly to ruin my relationship since before my wedding, and it hasn't stopped. Now, this is what I meant when I said keep an eye on timelines. What does since before my wedding mean? That could be minutes. 2 minutes before he walked up the altar, they've been endlessly trying to ruin his relationship and haven't stopped. Through to days before the wedding, months before the wedding, years before the wedding. Since before my wedding is really unspecified. He says it's been endless, but that's a persuasive word. Trying endlessly to ruin my relationship. I'd get the same meaning from the sentence if he didn't have endlessly in there. My parents have been trying to ruin my relationship, but he puts endlessly in there to persuade us how bad this is. And since before my wedding, and there are a lot of things specified in time in relation to the wedding. This is one of them. The time that the start of the ruining the relationship or the attempts to ruin the relationship began was since before my wedding. And it hasn't stopped. So this is another part of this endlessly thing going on there. So keep an eye on timelines as we go through. And here's another one. My mum, now that's a very nice term. Not mom, it's my mom. So he's owning it with a bit of a pronoun there. It's not calling her Victoria or she or anything like that, that would show a lot of distance and disgust. It's quite a nice term. Again, this is why I think he wants reconciliation. He talks about my mum. There's a sign of closeness there in the words that he uses. Cancelled making Nicola's dress in the 11th hour, despite how excited she was to wear her design, forcing her to urgently find a new dress. Let's break all that down. What does cancelled making mean? Stopped making would mean that she was in the middle of making it. I'm doing some sewing actions if you can't see me, because that's what I think. That's how I think dresses are made. But she cancelled making. So this was supposed to be in the 11th hour. And well, what does that mean? The night before, 11 p.m, the day before the wedding? No, that's it. I'm not making the dress anymore. Was it just very late? That's the 11th hour. Or, the allegation has been it's a year. Well, to cancel making, it's not stopped making, as in she was making and then she wasn't making. It's cancelled making, which suggests to me she was going to make and then decided not to make. And this was in the 11th hour. That could be anything, especially if he said some ultimatum like, I need to know if you're going to make Nicola's dress or not, Mum, and I need to know by tomorrow. And at the very end of that day, she went, no, I'm not going to make it. She could have cancelled making the dress at the 11th hour in his words. He wants us to get the impression it was all very last minute and urgently she had to find a new dress, but I don't think it was from this. Also, he hasn't said at the 11th hour, which is the most expected way of saying it. This happened at the 11th hour. It's in the 11th hour. It's a bit of a closer time, something happened in the 11th hour. I just want you to bear that one in mind for something that's coming up when we talk about the wedding dance. Just remember, in the 11th hour. Despite how excited she was to wear her design, I guess this is Nicola he's talking about. Now, that has no place in here. His beef is that Mum cancelled making Nicola's dress at the last moment, in his words there. Whether Nicola was excited or not should have no bearing on this whatsoever. Mum's done a bad thing, in his view, but he needs to tell us that Nicola was excited to wear her design. Was she? Or does he feel the need to tell us something that wasn't quite true? Did Victoria feel some of this antipathy towards her making the dress and decided not to continue? I don't want to do this. It's not a good idea. And now Brooklyn wants to tell us that Nicola was excited to wear her design because it's not relevant to this part of the story, but he feels he needs to add it in. It's just extra. And when someone goes extra and says something that doesn't need to be said to make the story stronger or make more sense, then it's very often relevant and they've added it in so we're informed of something they think it's important for us to be informed about. Very often those are things that are not true. So I'm not sure that Nicola was really excited to wear her design. And then that word urgently is a bit of a persuasive word for us as well. Here's another relative time to the wedding. Weeks before our big day. And you'll notice that is way more specific than in the 11th hour. You know, I've said in the 11th hour, what does that mean? We know it means late, but late in relationship to what? Whereas weeks before our big day is at least a little bit, saying that it's a few weeks before the big day. It's not right before the big day because that would be hours or days before the big day. This is a lot more specific. Weeks before our big day, my parents repeatedly pressured and attempted to bribe me into signing away the rights to my name, which would have affected me, my wife, and our future children. They were adamant on me signing before my wedding date because then the terms of the deal would be initiated. Wedding day looms large in his mind. Yeah, he's talked about it a lot. And the fact that they wanted this signing done before the wedding day and weeks before our big day is when he says this happened. The wedding day is central to him, central to his problems and central to the story he tells because he mentions it so often. And the things that we mention a lot, the things that we repeat mention are things that are very important to us. You can learn a lot about what is important to someone merely by sitting and looking at the things they mention a lot. Now, our future children got me very interested because, as far as I know, there's no pregnancy or anything like that. So why mention them? It's a very personal thing to do, to say that we are deciding to have children, especially, or we're planning to have children, especially for a newly married couple. So saying that there's future children on the way, well, that's an interesting thing to do. Very personal for someone who claims to want privacy, saying there's children on the way. This most famous couple in the world, or one of the most famous couples in the world, got grandchildren on the way. For someone who wants privacy, that's a weird thing to say. Is it, again, this threat, this thing to the family? You won't see our future children. You won't see our future children because you're driving me away, you're cutting me off, and you need to think about that. Is that what is going on there? He carries on. My holdout affected the payday. Again, no context. And they have never treated me the same since. Now, do you remember way back at the beginning, he said he'd been treated terribly his entire life? Well, now he's saying the treatment has not been the same since he decided to hold out on the name signing. And notice he doesn't say his refusal to do it, his decision not to do it. It's a holdout, like it's a negotiation that's going on. Interesting that bad behaviour didn't continue, but hasn't been the same since. He carries on. During the wedding planning, so once more, the wedding is at the centre here, and events that happened are referenced as to when they took place around the wedding, and this was during the wedding planning. My mum went so far as to call me evil because Nicola and I chose to include my nanny Sandra, Nicola's noni, at our table because they both didn't have their husbands. Both of our parents had their own tables equally adjacent to ours. What's going on here? He still calls it my mum, or my mum to be English about it. So he still is talking about her with some closeness. But now he's saying mum called me evil because Nicola and I chose to include these people at the table. Interesting that she didn't say they were both evil, just Brooklyn was evil in this telling of the story. That's interesting because a lot of the way through this, Nicola's the victim in Brooklyn's words. You could see Nicola was the victim of having to find the wedding dress urgently. Despite how exciting she was picked on and had to find the wedding dress urgently. But here, he's the evil one that's been called evil, even though it was the decision that Nicola and I chose. So, what's going on there? Is it possible that Mum and Dad don't like some of the decisions Nicola is making and think Brooklyn is being too weak or letting the side down by going with some of these decisions? So it's Brooklyn that is evil. Interesting that he's the one being dubbed evil in his telling of the story and not Nicola. Another reference to the time of the wedding. The night before our wedding, members of my family told me that Nicola was not blood and not family. And there's no explanation or context again with that. We have the night before our wedding, so we're getting closer and closer to the wedding, but all the times are still stamped around the wedding. Obviously, the source of so much frustration for him told me that Nicola was not blood and not family. I've got some news for him. These things are true. She's not blood and she's not family yet, and she's not even biologically family even when she marries him. So what was the context of the conversation? It could be a horrible conversation. You want to stay well away from her. She's not blood, she's not family. Don't trust her. She's not blood, she's not family, she's not one of us. Those could be things that happen. Or it could be a conversation about something else entirely, like blood types. She's not blood, she's not family, she won't have the same blood type as us. I know I'm pushing it to ridiculous extremes, but he hasn't provided any explanation or any context as to what this conversation was about. Was it a really evil conversation? Well, if it was, why doesn't he give us more context? Or was it an innocuous conversation and that's why or more innocuous conversation? Is that why he's having it? Also, it's members of my family told me that, not Mum. And he's been very specific when Mum has said stuff before. Who are these members of my family? Right, we're about halfway through the note. We still have to talk about that wedding dance. And what did happen in that wedding dance? That is still to come. A quick pause there. If you're finding this useful, following the podcast really helps because you get to hear this kind of language regularly. You don't learn everything in one episode, you just start noticing patterns over time. And the more often you hear them, the more obvious they become without you even trying. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, following the show means new episodes land automatically and you keep building your skills in seeing and hearing deception, the truth, credibility and manipulation in someone's words. Right, let's get back to it. And the statement carries on. Since the moment I started standing up for myself with my family, I've received endless attacks from my parents, both privately and publicly, that were sent to the press on their orders. Once more, it's about perception. It's not that he's had these attacks, it's the fact they're in the press. And you'll see that privately doesn't really matter. It's the publicly ones that matter, and the fact they were sent to the press on their orders. He really does care about what is in the press about him and what's on social media about him. Even my brothers were sent to attack me on social media before they ultimately blocked me out of nowhere this last summer. Well, if they were attacking you on social media, surely the blocking wasn't out of nowhere. Surely you must have known there was some beef going on. My brothers were sent to attack me on social media and then they blocked me out of the blue? No, that's not what happened. He's being overly dramatic with his choice of words here. Let's talk about the dance. My mom hijacked my first dance with my wife, which had been planned weeks in advance to a romantic love song. So again, this wedding planning, this series of time before the wedding has been so stressful to this guy. You can see that. He's been really hacked off, rightly or wrongly, with some of the things that have happened. And it was planned weeks in advance to a romantic love song. In front of our 500 wedding guests, get the number in there, okay? This was a big wedding. This is him managing his perception again. Look at me, I had a wedding with 500 people because that doesn't need to be there. In front of our wedding guests, in front of my closest family and friends. No, in front of our 500 wedding guests, Mark Anthony called me to the stage again. I had 500 wedding guests and Mark Anthony on the stage calling me up. Not just in front of our guests, I was called to the stage. He really is working the perception here. Where in the schedule was planned to be my romantic dance with my wife. But instead, my mum was waiting to dance with me instead. Two insteads there. We all misspeak. We all make typos. I read emails back I've sent all the time and go, oh my God, I've said that twice. But he really wants to persuade us that something happened instead here. And that's why that is there twice. She danced very inappropriately on me in front of everyone. So it wasn't just inappropriate, it was very inappropriate. He really wants us to know what that is. And this is the line that so many people have picked up and gone, oh my God, that sounds horrendous. What happened? He doesn't say. He doesn't say. He doesn't say, what is inappropriate? If you're dead cool, you want to do some street dance and someone does a waltz, that's inappropriate. If you think you're dead cool and someone says, let's do the jitterbug or what's that, the Charleston or something like that, that's an inappropriate dance. If it's overly sexual, that's also inappropriate. He doesn't say. He just leaves it there like innuendo for us to go and find the meaning that we want. But because he doesn't state it, we should not assume it. If he thought it was too sexual, he should say that. If he thought it wasn't the right thing for a mom to be doing with a son, he should have said that. If he thought it wasn't very cool, he should have said that, but he doesn't. He leaves it to our imagination, and we should not assume what he means by that. Then he says very inappropriately, on me. Ooh, that gives me shivers of creepiness. Mom dancing on him. Did he mistype? Remember that in the 11th hour, and now on me. Should be with me, shouldn't it? Should be at the 11th hour, should be dancing very appropriately with me, but it's on me. It's being made to happen to him in his words. He's under, she's on top, and that might just be metaphorical rather than physical. And what is up? Not that it was inappropriate, that it was in front of everyone. He states once again, he doesn't like what people see. He really cares about how he is seen. I've never felt more uncomfortable or humiliated in my entire life. Now, uncomfort, we get, but again, this is one of those absolutes. I've never felt more uncomfortable or humiliated in my entire life. You know what? I bet he has. Also, humiliation is a public thing, isn't it? Humiliation is because of what other people see. So once again, this is about his perception. We wanted to renew our vows so we could create new memories of our wedding day that brought us joy and happiness, not anxiety and embarrassment. He says we wanted to. He doesn't say they did. So again, this is information that I think he wants to land one way. Oh my God, the wedding was so bad they had to renew their vows. But he only says we wanted to. It's in the past. We wanted to renew our vows. He doesn't say it actually happened. So he's laying it on thick here. My wife has been consistently disrespected by my family. So once more painting Nicola as the victim here. Consistently disrespected by my family. No matter how hard we've tried to come together as one. My mum has repeatedly invited women from my past into our lives in ways that were clearly intended to make us both uncomfortable. When someone has to tell you something is clear, it doesn't tell you why it's clear. It's very often not clear. It's his guess, or it's what he wants you to think about it. It was clearly intended to make us both uncomfortable. I don't think it was that clear. It could be something that happened that he's taken umbrage at, but was well-intentioned by his mum. And that's why he uses that persuasive word. It was clear, okay? Don't question this. It was clear, and I'm going to add that word in. That word doesn't need to be there. It could be much straighter that my mum has repeatedly invited women from my past into our lives in ways which were intended to make us both uncomfortable. He could have said that, but he has to say it was clearly. And also that word repeatedly is another one. It didn't just happen. Mum has invited women from my past lives in ways that made us both uncomfortable. It's repeatedly did it. Once more, he's laying it on over thick. And there is no context again. How has his wife been disrespected? He doesn't say. And in what way were these women from the past brought into our lives in ways to make us feel both uncomfortable? He doesn't say. Mum is the person he's mentioned issues with so far. He will mention Dad, but Mum's issues came up first. So I think Mum is his real issue. Although he still has my mum, still calls her my mum. Just like he says my wife. There's no different from the way they're referred to. Nicola seems to be the main victim to him. He carries on. Despite this, we still travelled to London for my dad's birthday and were rejected for a week as we waited in our hotel room trying to plan quality time with him. So we have some interesting words there. We, who's we and who's our? I'm guessing it's him and Nicole, because we still travelled to London for my dad's birthday. We waited in our hotel room trying to plan quality time with him. Was he in the hotel room? Were you trying to plan quality time with him in the hotel room? Is he there? Or were you sitting in the hotel room trying to plan quality time um, um, and kind of telling him what it was you wanted to do? Notice that they were trying to plan quality time with him. So trying, when someone tries to do something, it's always failure. Did you fix that window? I tried. Means that it hasn't been fixed. So they didn't plan that quality time. They didn't get that quality time with him. Notice they wanted to spend some quality time with Dad. Mum hasn't been mentioned at all. It was Dad's birthday, but Mum hasn't been mentioned. Mum hasn't been mentioned at all. He refused all of our attempts. Again, that's a sense of failure. But again, it's our attempts. So I really do believe this was Brooklyn and Nicola going, here's an idea, we want to do this, we want to do this, we want to do this. We don't want to do what you've suggested, we want to do these things. And no middle ground for them whatsoever. And, you know, he refused all of our attempts unless it was at his big birthday party with 100 guests and cameras at every quarter. So this is going back to the things happen publicly, and they maybe didn't want something to happen publicly here, but he's very aware of the publicity and people being around. When he finally agreed to see me, it was under the condition that Nicola wasn't invited. It was a slap in the face. Later, when my family travelled to LA, they refused to see me at all. So it was under the condition that Nicola wasn't invited when they finally agreed to see me, not under the condition that Nicola didn't come. Or Nicola, it was me only. It was that Nicola wasn't invited. That's a curious way that things happened. Yeah, we'll only see you. We'll only see you if Nicola's not invited, because that's not an invitation to Nicola. So these words don't hang together for me. It was a slap in the face. Later, when my family travelled to LA, they refused to see me at all. That's me, Brooklyn. Obviously, I'm not Brooklyn. That's me, Brooklyn, that he's talking about there. Nicola's not mentioned in that at all. We've got Nicola, the victim again. Nicola wasn't invited, but when my family travelled to LA, they refused to see me at all. But this time, Nicola's not mentioned. It's not us at all. And he's very clear about talking about us or we when he's talking about himself and Nicola. My family values public promotion and endorsements above all else. Brand Beckham comes first. Family love is decided by, and we've got another list. And what comes top of the list? Yeah, you guessed it, social media. Family love is decided by how much you post on social media or how quickly you drop everything to show up and pose for a family photo op. Publicity again, even if it's at the expense of our professional obligations. So again, this is all about how he is seen and his control over how he is seen. We've gone out of our way to show up for years to show up and support at every fashion show, every party, and every press activity to show our perfect family. We, who is we? Is that him and his family, his brothers? Does he have a sister? Let me know in the comments. I'm not big up on the Beckhams. I have met Brooklyn Beckham once though. We've gone out of our way for years to show up and support. And there's a list, every fashion show, that's Mum, every party, every press activity to show our perfect family. But the one time my wife asked for my mum's support to save displaced dogs during the LA fires, my mum refused. Now that line has none of the persuasive LY words clearly, repeatedly, or any of those things that are in the other claims. I believe this one. Now one time my wife asked for my mum's support to save displaced dogs, my mum refused. I believe that one is true. It reads very differently from most of the other claims that Brooklyn gives. The narrative that my wife controls me is completely backwards. I've been controlled by my parents for most of my life. It was his entire life at the beginning, but now it's just most of his life. And he's got this little focus on who controls him. Again, is this about how he is seen? Is he fed up that he was seen as being controlled by David and Victoria for a long time? Now he's being seen as being controlled by Nicola. And he's just seen as being under control so much. And what is seen in the press is controlled by other people. And he wants to be seen as himself. Is that what his issue is? He says, I grew up with overwhelming anxiety. That's in the past tense. It's not, I grew up and have overwhelming anxiety. So he's not saying he's got anxiety at the moment. I'm not belittling anxiety. What I'm saying is he talks about it in the past tense. Or it's not, I'm growing up with, or anything like that. No, there's no way present. And that'll become important later. For the first time in my life, since stepping away from my family, that anxiety has disappeared. Again, Anxiety in the past tense, that anxiety is gone. I wake up every morning grateful for the life I chose and have found peace and relief. My wife and I do not want a life shaped by image, press, or manipulation. He's telling us what he doesn't want again. That's where his focus is. Image, press, manipulation. We've seen it all the way through the statement. That is where his focus is. I think he does want a good image, good press, and manipulation. He doesn't want manipulation. He wants that out of his life. All we want, peace, privacy, and happiness for us and our future family. He said he'd found peace earlier. Just want you to point that out. I have found peace and relief is what he says earlier, and now he says I want peace, privacy, and happiness. So he's not telling us the truth here. He's saying he wants peace, but he's also saying he has peace. If you want something, you don't already have it. We have a mention of the future family again. By the way, you're going to miss the grandchildren unless you bend to my way. That's why I'm talking about future family. And he wants privacy, he says. And yet he released this statement, breaking behind the doors of Bram Beckham, saying he was going to set stories straight, saying there's grandchildren imminent or planned at the very least. And he wants privacy by doing that. I don't buy that. So that is his statement. What do I think? Right, the focus is on what's shown publicly more than what the truth is, and more than what's happened in private. You know, he really is focused on how people see him. Those two big stories, the dance story and the dress story, these are overdone. I don't think any of them are as they appear inside that statement. But the wedding was certainly the centre of a lot of pressure and the time ramping up to that. Actually, Brooklyn, that is the case for many, many, many couples that get married. The wedding build-up is a really stressful time. Nicola seems to be the heart of the issue and the main victim of his story. He seems to think that she has suffered, but he's obviously the victim of his own story as well. He's feeling it very much himself. But for someone who wants privacy, this isn't the way to do it. So why is he doing it? For me, it's leverage. It's a threat of, look, I've said some things, I'm not scared to do that. I can say even more, even if you don't bend to my will, I can do you harm, Mom and Dad. I think that is what he's doing there. I think that is what is behind that statement. What do you think? Let me know in the comments if you can on this platform and get in touch on social media. You'll find all the links for me at neveratruerword.com. That's also where you'll find a whole load more episodes just like this, breaking down the words that people use, from horrible criminals to people in the news, politicians and more. If you want to know what they're really saying and what people around you are really saying, then do check out some more episodes. You'll find the full lists at neveratruerword.com. And we'll see you soon for something new from Never a Truer Word. And remember, the truth is always in the words.